Hello, and welcome to this next episode of Five Alarm Task Force. This is episode 3, I believe, in our new, yes, it is, 9-3, our ninth season, third guest. And we are very pleased to have with us today a friend from basically when I first started the podcast. I think it was in the first year. Aaron and I got together. I had seen him on social media and reached out to him, and he was there. And he's been here several times with us. But what's so important about having Aaron with us is he is a specialist in so many parts of keeping firefighters healthy and wellness. And his company is called firerescuefitness.com, FRF, and they've expanded tremendously with what he's doing. He'll talk about that with us. But Aaron has over 20 years of firefighting experience as an on-call paid firefighter in Golden Valley, Minnesota, and currently a firefighter lieutenant EMT and training officer in Madison, Wisconsin. He is the owner of Fire Rescue Fitness, a company that creates workout programs and fitness articles that focus on getting fire rescue athletes fit for duty. Aaron holds a Bachelor of Science degree in health and wellness, is a certified strength and conditioning specialist, a National Academy of Sports Medicine certified personal trainer, and an IAFF, IAFC Peer Fitness Trainer. He has also worked in the fitness industry for over 30 years now, and has experience working with the general population as well as athletes from the NBA, NFL, and NHL. If you're a sports lover, you're going to be very jealous of this guy. He is the author of the Ultimate Fire Rescue Athlete Workout and other fitness programs catered towards fire rescue athletes, and has recently published in Firehouse. He's been published in Firehouse and Fire Rescue Magazine, Firefighter Nation, and the PFFW, Professional Firefighters of Wisconsin Quarterly. In 2016, he presented at Firehouse Expo and Firehouse World. At Firehouse Expo, Aaron headed and conducted the Firehouse Fit for Duty workouts and was a prominent speaker during the event. He has appeared on numerous radio and television programs and presents to fire departments all over the country. He lives by and teaches the motto, and listen to this, please. If you like what he's talking about, listen to this quote: train like a life depends on it. It should say minimum of 2 lives depend on it. That's yourself and the person you want to rescue. So, because that we know is oftentimes the toughest part to do, is to worry about, can I get this person out? Do I have the strength to do it? Do I need another partner? But the training that he provides and how he presents it, and he has great news coming up. They just broke with me before we started, makes him really unique in the firefighting world in the U.S. because of the reach that he has had from cold Madison, Wisconsin. But I did visit, where was it? Appleton, Wisconsin, for five years in a row, working at a synagogue there for the high holidays.
Okay.
And that was my first time in the state of Wisconsin, and I loved it because it was in the fall, and every fall that I was there, those 5 years, beautiful foliage, and the amazing part of being able to see live deer just herding around, eating, resting, and almost any turn I took that was right outside the city limits. It was wonderful, and it really made a strong impact on me, having never been there, and wonderful people that I dealt with at the synagogue there, and just the scenery and what I got to see in those times there, including one of my first trips there was to a company that builds, I heard, fire engines or something like that in Appleton.
Yeah, right.
I forget their name off the top of
Yeah,
my head. Yeah. Oh, there's a name. Oh, it's
it's
begins with a
with
P.
something with puncture. Oh no,
Oh,
Pierce, I think. Yeah,
Pierce.
yeah.
That's what it is. Yes, I was able to have a wonderful 2-day tour of both Pierce and Oshkosh, and it was amazing. And that's made me fall in love with the state and that city as well. So,
Yep.
Aaron, welcome aboard. It's so great,
Thanks.
good to have you again. Um,
Been a
And
fun run, hasn't it? Boy, 9 seasons. Congrats to you.
thank you. Thank you.
And and I actually another thing, I'm normally like you now. I host a podcast as well, and
Right?
called Better Every Shift, and that's been great. I've learned taken some things through our conversations and tried to transfer them onto the podcast that I do, and so thanks for having me here. We always have great conversations, so it's great to
Yes.
be back for season 9, my friends. So, yeah, lots of good stuff. The cool part is, I guess I'm still here and I'm still relevant. I always start my presentations like someone called me the OG of firefighter fitness and wellness because I started, 15 years ago. And when I first presented, I always tell this story about Chief Sulka from FDNY who was there, and I was in a planning committee for Firehouse, for quite a few years. And the very first time I walked in, all these chiefs are in nice dress shirts and they're slacks and their normal business dress attire. I'm a fitness guy, so I had a sweatshirt on and like, not sweatpants, but workout pants kind of thing. And so I came in the room and here's all these chiefs, all of which I've read. They all have books and publications. And
Sure.
Chief Salka, I sat down next to him and he's like, hey, how do I get a movie on my iPad? Like I couldn't get a movie on my iPad on the fly. And I think everybody kind of thought I was the IT guy. I was there for tech stuff. Um, but that soon changed as we started to talk about, this is almost, God, that was over 10, 15 years ago, this meeting, and we started to talk more about firefighter health and wellness, and fitness was kind of the main focus at that point. And he was a still is to this day a great mentor, and really tries to be an ambassador for that mission as well. And I think, that first meeting was Tim Sandelbeck was there from Firehouse, and Chief Sulka was there and Chief Michael Bryan. There was a ton of influential people in the fire service, and just to see them at one point when they started talking about firefighter health and wellness, they all kind of went, "Oh, that's why the guy in the sweatpants and stuff is here." And it's just been a great ride. So they call me kind of the OG, I guess, of firefighter fitness. Still happy to be, I guess, relevant because I'm here talking to you, and keep trying to improve my own education. So I got a couple more certifications, and with that though, I've also, you'll see the hats changed a little bit. I gotten the opportunity to work under Chief Frank Lieb to do some projects with FRCE, which is the First Responder Center for Excellence. It's kind of a sister organization or charity of the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, with a focus on preventing, firefighter fatalities through the health and wellness side. So we focus on cancer prevention, fitness, injury prevention, really focus on cardiorespiratory fitness and health, mental health, behavior health, and also really pushing, annual medicals, and to really get firefighters, any member of the fire service, to think about the prevention that we really, really need to focus on in order to make an impact on the statistics and data that's kind of, it's not grim, but over the last couple of years, we're going to see more firefighter fatalities due to the fact that now cancer is now considered a line of duty death, and suicide. And when you really start to dig into those numbers, we can do better, I think. And FRCE is really, really dedicated to that side of prevention, and we develop resources, research, and mainly education on how to change this culture that we have within the fire service. And so I've been very, very fortunate to get the tutelage of Chief Lieb, and we're doing a couple of workshops around the country. These are 2-day workshops that really just focus on the basics of functional health and wellness, and so that opportunities come up. The podcast has come up. I still write. I don't know how. They publish me because I'm not very bright. My dad told me I got a room temperature IQ, but somehow I can still transfer that into 700 to 800 words every once in a while. And I'm just very, very, very fortunate for those that do read, and hopefully take the messages to heart, which we'll address, I think, throughout this conversation. So it's again, thanks for having me. And I wake up every day and people go, God, how do you, travel? How do you do all that work? And I'm like, I don't think it's work. It's just a passion. I'm just really fortunate to find a profession like firefighting that I love, and I can combine it with my other passion of trying to help people in the fitness realm. And it's just been a great experience for me. So
That's great
so
to
here we
hear.
are today,
I'm looking
still
at
around.
this. I'm looking at this poster behind you. I love what it says, and I hope our listeners and viewers will take it to heart. Viewers will see this right above Aaron's head in the picture, but it says, "Great things never came from comfort zones," and that's so
Yeah.
true. Um, when I joined back in '77, this volunteer department, I had no idea. I had no fire background whatsoever. I was good and handy with hand tools. With my dad, taught me a lot of it. But fact is, I didn't know anything about firefighting. But I walked into the station that day, and Captain saw me. I was just looking at the apparatus. I was going to a store right across the street, and he took me around, showed me all the apparatus, and introduced me to the chief. And I said, "You don't have to introduce me to the chief. I'm just looking at the trucks." He goes, "No, he wants to meet a guy like you. You're in a three-piece suit. He would want to meet you." So I met the chief and talked with him for about a half hour and walked out with an envelope in my hand. I thought I was going to talk about the department. Turned out it was an application. And like an idiot, I signed it. And it was one of the best signatures I ever put on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. But you probably weren't, you weren't 100% knowledgeable of what you're getting into, or like you said, very comfortable in some cases, because there's some things you're like, wait a minute, I don't necessarily know about this. But, um, you mentioned that, and that's really the foundation for growth, is to get out of your comfort zone, whether it's, joining, the fire service, challenging yourself on different skills, yeah, or, having conversations that are difficult, or, sometimes getting that workout in that you really don't want to do. And, it's not going to feel good, but it all leads to growth, and it all leads to improvement. And, and that's kind of the cool thing that we try to focus on like with the Better Every Shift podcast. And it's been something that I've tried to embrace. I love to read. I know you do too. And, Tony Robbins, I know some people go, oh, he's a little out there, but I like to take tidbits of information from a lot of different motivational people. And one of the things I got from Tony Robbins is that he takes a cold shower every morning. And, cold plunges are really big right now in the world of recovery, but he does it for a different reason. And I thought this was pretty interesting, and kind of pertains to what we're talking about. He said, I do that for, it started off as just 10 seconds. Now he's up to like a minute or 2 minutes. And he says, it's because I don't want to do it. I feel uncomfortable doing it. But what he says is it gets his brain functioning on, focusing on doing difficult things. And he says it sets a mindset for his day. He's like, I got this out of my way and I actually feel pretty good. And so my mind is telling me to, attack those things that maybe aren't comfortable for me. And I just thought, well, that's a pretty interesting mindset, and I'm trying to adapt it. Just start with like 10 seconds and just a little cold water. I didn't want to do that, maybe feel uncomfortable, but like his thought is that it springboards in other uncomfortable things that lead to growth. And and in fitness, when you break it down, right, like the essence of working out is you kind of break your muscle tissue down, build it up with good nutrition, and that's how you get stronger. Same thing that should apply to everything we do in life.
Right.
Education. Sometimes it's hard to read and really try to figure out how to apply information, but when you figure that out, you learn and you grow. So yeah, well, I'm glad you said that. And I have a co-host who has been an editor of mine for a long time, and she is very she'll be mad if I tell this story, but she originally had come up with the idea to said, hey, we just want you to start interviewing, talking to leaders, and doing this podcast. And then turns out I said, no, I want you on it. And she's very uncomfortable on camera, and with a microphone and asking questions, and just to watch her develop and grow kind of is the essence of, I think, what we all need to try to embrace within the fire service is, you know, if I can't throw a ladder, I shouldn't avoid doing it because it's part of my job. If I can't do 10 push-ups and you took an oath to be able to protect and serve your community, knowing that you need that strength and that functionality, we need to start embracing that and saying, okay, then I need to get better about it. And and I know part of that leads into a whole line of culture questions about trying to build each other up instead of put each other down. But I think it all kind of resonates back to that great things never came from comfort zones kind of mentality. So yeah, it's great. That's why I put it up there. And every once in a while, it's really easy to do things that we want to do all the time. But if we want to continually grow and especially thrive in the fire service, you really need to understand that concept, right?
Right, absolutely. I have to, matter of fact, my grandson, who's just over 3, is really into fire stuff. I got him hooked into it with firefighting toys and a bunch of fire engines in here. But I just noticed on your back wall, just to the right on your side, on that underneath your poster, is the Paw Patrol
Yep.
puppy, and
Yep.
he is so eat up. That was from my my chief in North Carolina back then. He always would say "eat up" when you're really into something. So my
Yeah, eat up the knowledge or eat up the conversation or whatever it
yeah,
might be, right? Like
yeah,
dig
exactly.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, with the memorabilia behind me, it's kind of it's grown over the years. And I know like a lot of times in firefighting and traveling, you get coins and you get patches from people, and every little bit of memorabilia kind of has a story. And for me, I was like, where can I put this? And I do a lot of work here. This is, believe it or not, is also on the other side of this little area. It's a studio on one side, and then the other side is actually a squat rack. And I have a TRX hanging, and I have some weights in the corner, and I got a little mat there and a exercise bike. And so I've converted this room into my house. Basically, it's my office, workout room, and studio. And I just started to, as you encounter people, I've been very fortunate, been traveling around. I mean, you mentioned 2016 in the bio, and I'm like, oh man, that was great. That was like almost 10 years ago, and I'm still here doing it. I was just at FRI in Dallas and just met a lot of tremendous people and got coins and shirts, and so I just started putting them back behind me and making like a little collage of things. Some people call it your man cave, but this is, to me, is just a little more. There's some personal things like Golden Valley Fire was my very first fire department. That was my very first shirt, so I got to frame that. I have a book signed by Chief Lieb, and there's a lot of other just things that some days when it's not going so well and I just don't feel like I'm making an impact, it's kind of nice to turn around and look and see, all right, it's not about, a post that gets 1 million followers or, to me, I don't even have a TikTok or TikTok, whatever you call those. Like, that's not why I do it. But if someone can sincerely send me something and say, hey, I followed what you've been doing, and it made a positive impact on what I do every day. To me, that's just the greatest thing that you can,
no, sure.
that at least in my eyes, that's why I do it. So, it's great that you mentioned. I think those two. I think I got one of those for my parents gave me one for like a Christmas gift. My mom saw it. She's like, "Oh, I think you need to put this in the studio." And then I can't remember where the other one came from, but I have that. And then I got a trophy for speaking at a Brothers Helping Brothers conference. And now that I
Nice.
look back at it, I tried to keep all, you could see also there's like all these badges. Whenever you go speak, you get like a speaker badge. And over the years, I just started throwing them in a drawer, and they're now hanging behind me. And I might almost be up to about 60 or 70 of them. And someone asked me the other day how many articles I've written, and I was like, I don't know. And I think it might be about the same. So it's just, it comes back to a point. I think a lot of times in society, when you start looking at Instagram and you start looking at TikTok, and I see a lot of guys in Firehouse, and it brings you into this. I think it sucks you in, and YouTube now is doing it, um and that's not necessarily reality. And I think sometimes it's comfortable because I can watch other people doing these things, and then I can just get self-absorbed into it, and I don't have to necessarily pay attention to what's around me. And so when I started the studio, I just thought about, well, we'll put things back there that will help ground you, will help keep you kind of, um, just remembering about what you're really trying to do, right? And that's just make a positive impact on people. And so there's books back here that I read and that I recommend. And, I just try to stay positive, and it's not easy. I have people go like, man, you're annoyingly positive. I'm like, not all the time, man. But um, I think, gratitude is something I really tried to focus on, and it plays so much into fitness, and people are like, dude, this guy's wacky. But no, I think you got to hear me out. Like if you ever have you have a 3-year-old grandchild, if they are fussing and whining and crying, if you ask them what's his favorite, ice cream flavor, or what's his favorite truck, and they'll stop crying and say fire truck, and you go like, well, do you want to go walk over and see a fire truck? And the next thing you know, their mentality has changed, right? They go from ornery, crabby, grumpy to, yeah, grandpa's going to take me to go see another fire truck sometime, and they change their focus. Firefighters are no freaking different. Like we sit around a table and think we can solve all the issues, and we tell great stories and we tell great jokes, but all of a sudden you can see that people start to pile on about negativity. Well, you can easily change that too by, you know what, we get to ride on a fire truck today, and we may get that opportunity to save a life or to really make a positive impact. And sometimes when you can change your mindset, it just changes your environment. And I relate that back to fitness, and you look at it as, I get the opportunity to do workout today, and there's other people that are struggling that maybe can't do that, or are injured and can't do that. So it kind of encompasses a lot. And I know this is kind of more deep and heavy, but in this field of work, it really can beat you down over time, just because of the stress, because of sometimes environment, because of the lack of sleep, because of, all the other things that go on in life. And so whenever you can find ways to be positive, I highly recommend it. If somebody's listening to this, my challenge to them would be, look, write one positive thing down every day. And just start your day with, all right, I get to drive a fire truck, or I get the opportunity to work out, or the sun is shining, and it can really change a lot of things in the way you look at, life. Um, and I resorted back. So last night I worked, and we got 6 calls after midnight. So I'm functioning on fumes, but I get the opportunity to talk to my good friend Steve Green, who has always been a believer in what I talked about. So to me, that just fires me up. So I'm not thinking about being tired. I will as soon as we're done. I'm going to go take a nap. But and I have a really great crew that I get to work with, that we'll go to a call at 2:30 in the morning with somebody who's really, really sick, really, really struggling. And a lot of times we'll come back to the truck, and I'll hear one of the crew members just go, I'm not complaining about anything, because look at that. Like that's that person's going through a lot more than me just having to get up and be able to help somebody. So yeah, a long drawn out way about, getting uncomfortable, but also I think gratitude, is kind of another takeaway from what we're talking about. And it leads into so many other things of health and wellness.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one thing. My late father always taught his 3 sons that you always have to be grateful to people who help you. And if somebody helps you, then it's your obligation to help them back. And whether it's taking their business cards and spreading them around to friends, because they, if some of your friends could use the talent of that person. And sometimes it's just saying thank you back, saying thanks for doing all the great work you did here in our house, and we really appreciate it. And I think that's so important because we've lost that. And I've had people in the last year alone, workers come to the house, and we make sure that, like, we have part of a flat roof done that's on our home, and we had cold water in a fridge outside on the porch. They always kept it filled for the guys because they were here. It was 92, 94. That was just the ambient temperature. Don't count the heat index, because we just finished 2.5 weeks of heat indexes in the mid 90s. Just broke over this past weekend. So that's a relief. But I knew that these guys were helping me. I vetted the company and the team, the foreman who was here. Great guy, took all responsibility, passed the inspection on the first try out there. And, they said, well, I said, can I give you guys a little stipend to thank you? He says, no, no, no. You had the water out, you had the basket out for us, you had the shop vac out for us so we can keep it clean. He said, you did more than we get in 95% of our halls, homes that we work on. So I think gratitude, as a matter of fact, what you said, I think rings very true. Gratitude is when you go on a tough call, you do your best, and maybe it comes out for the better. We can't help but the fact that sometimes it does not come out for the better. But I think we have to remember that as long as we tried our best, and we can look in that mirror, and that person in the mirror looking back at us, they always know if we're telling the truth or not. That's one person you can't lie to, or you can lie to, but they're not going to buy it, because the guy or the gal in the mirror knows every secret we carry. So the fact of sometimes we walk away from a decent rescue and we can feel good about it because we helped somebody who needed help. And that's really what our oath is all about, is just being a decent person, because we're no different than any other citizen in our community. The only difference is some have this job, some have that job, and some decide to be firefighters or EMTs and paramedics or law enforcement. Fact is, we need to assess each call on our way back and say, wow, we got a good save, patient's viable. It was a tough call, but we did it, and we got him back, and we got to the hospital. And then all of a sudden you get a card 2 months, 3 months later. Thank you for saving my life.
Yeah. Or you get to meet them again somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? Like you come in contact with them again, and and there's also the times where it doesn't work out, but
Right.
you may see the family member in the store, and they stop and they say, you were at my house 2 months ago, and that just that literally just happened to me, where we had a P&B at a we have some assisted living. They're like side-by-side duplexes where they're like group homes. And we had a pulseless non-breather that we were unable to resuscitate. And the caregiver was there, who was, really bonded with that person and individual. And, they witnessed arrest and they did everything right. They actually started compressions on the individual. And we got there, and I could see she was pretty shaken up. So crew did a great job. We did everything we could. And I just tried to, just tell her I was sorry. We were unable to revive him. Is there anything I could do for her to help her, what phone calls she needed to make? So I made the call to the family because she wasn't comfortable doing that. And then we stuck around just a little bit just to make sure, that she understood everything that was going on. And, of course, we go about our day. We talked about it as a crew. There's some things that I thought we did really, really well. There's some things, maybe one or two that, hey, we could have possibly done something a little bit different, but the crew, we felt good about our performance. The next morning, and I usually go to the grocery store after shift, I saw the young lady in the grocery store and she just started tearing up again. And I just went up, just gave her, she came up, kind of gave me a hug. And I said, we have a tendency we see that a lot. And so I'm really grateful to see you because, our crew was all concerned about you. We never met that person before, but we're individuals and we're human. And I think it's okay to humanize what we do because it brings us back down to reality and at the same time can bond us with our community. And so they can understand what we go through a little bit, and so she even said, she's like, do you guys see that a lot? I'm like, yeah, we do, unfortunately, and actually that day we saw it twice. And, but anyways, I was really grateful for that moment to be able to make an impact on somebody I never knew. And I thought, what a cool thing we get to do. What a cool thing we get to do. And so, kind of gives me chills just thinking about that. Like, yeah, and we can't take that for granted. And if we ever start
Right.
to, I think that's when you just need to look at those around you and kind of check yourself too. But that call, it didn't go well on the standpoint of the outcome, but our response, the teamwork and everything else I thought was good. And so sometimes you win, sometimes you learn,
Right.
and or sometimes you lose, or yeah, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. So anyways, the fact that we can make an impact on people is something that we should all be grateful for.
Absolutely.
And I think when you lose track of that, again, you got to just look in the mirror. And when you do look in the mirror, you have to be willing to see the good and the bad and see through some of the BS sometimes, you know. And on that, I actually there's a new concept. I don't know what you would think of this too, Steve. I mean, you work with first responders for a long, long time. When you look at like our health and wellness, I used to train a lot of pro athletes, but I also train a lot of executives and parents and moms and dads. And one of the things I would always find is that like with CEOs, this is very, very successful CEOs would never reschedule a workout. They would never reschedule anything when it came to their own mental health and health. I could call some of the CEOs, they're multi-billion, $1 million, almost $1 billion companies, and I could get right through. And like I said, they wouldn't reschedule. Some of the CEOs that struggled were the ones that would reschedule a lot. And it was because they would prioritize other things in front of themselves and their own health. Moms and dads and parents a lot of times would reschedule because they had to get Billy, Bobby, Johnny, Sue to whatever, uh, or they thought they needed to be there for something. And I see this with first responders. Getting to my point is, I'm almost calling it responders' excuse. Is that mirror that you're talking about? Is we can look at it and go, yeah, I'm a couple pounds overweight and I haven't done my annual medical, but I'm working so many overtimes and I'm helping everybody else, right? And if I help everybody else, I don't have to look in the mirror to help myself. And we can really fall into this kind of excuse. And I've seen it. I used to call it the parents' excuse, or I used to call it the I'm too busy excuse, whatever it is. But I think in the realm of first responders, we start to, like I said, get so dedicated, so we think, to serving others that we forget about ourselves. And I think we forget about ourselves because we know there needs to be some difficult conversations and actions and changes needed to really make an impact or to turn our health around. And so, if you're listening to this and it's been a while since you've done your annual medical, if it's been a while since you've actually done your body composition, if you've done any type of physical assessment, I think it's time to always do that and really be honest with where you are. And I think the second part of that is you got to just check your ego and ask for help or find ways to get yourself healthy, because you really you're not a good first responder if you're not good to yourself. And self-care, is very valid. And so I've seen this throughout my career now. I'm over 50, and I've seen it a lot of times where responders, I've had some fire officers that they just sacrifice their own health just to work more overtimes or to, you know, do other things to help everybody and would not work on themselves. And unfortunately led to injuries, sometimes early retirements, sometimes a lot of problems with mood and leadership. So I like to call it responders guilt, where we just we use that excuse, a responder's excuse, where we use it like, hey, I'm helping everybody else. And maybe one day I'll start helping myself. And my plea to you is the the quicker and the better you help yourself, the more you're going to be able to help everybody else. And
Very
so,
true.
Yeah.
Very true. All right, folks, we're going to take a break here. We'll be right back. If you're watching the video, you won't see anything change. If you're listening to the audio, we'll have a couple of PSAs, and then we'll be back with our guest, Aaron Zamzow, talking about the need for firefighter health and wellness. And this year, we're finding we need it much more than ever before. So we'll be right back right after these words. As always, please stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the second half of this episode of Five Alarm Task Force with my guest, Aaron Zamzow. I've known him since, I guess, late 2016, early 2017. We met online on social media, and it was those bullies who pushed me into doing this podcast originally. All those nice, friendly firefighters on social media kept saying to me, well, Steve, you have good stuff. Are you still a firefighter? No, I've been out since 85 when I got hurt. Oh, but I said, I read the trades. And they said, come on, you got to do a podcast. I said, great. What's a podcast?
Yeah.
I had no idea what a
Well,
podcast
you're kind of
was.
you're the OG too. You're talking about me being one of the OGs of fitness. I mean, you're one of the first ones that started a podcast for the fire service, I think, right? Like
I don't
not all
know. I don't know if I'm the first, and I don't think I'm the best. What's important to me is to have the guests who will benefit our audiences. That's what's most important to me. The guests will have that influence on our audiences. And that's the most important part. Now, when we were closing that first segment of the show, I want to bring up something about always doing, but always being grateful. We have around the corner from the house, we have a big one of those membership clubs. And I've done some shopping there. And the main exit to come out of there is on the road that's just around the corner from us as well. And I was second in line. And the woman ahead of me, there was a stop sign. And you can make a right. You can make a left going out, but it can be dangerous because it's a busy road coming out of the store. And right in front of me, the woman who's approaching the stop sign went right past it. She scooted out and she got T-boned by a lady coming down the main road at the regular speed limit, but the woman just dropped out, popped out right in front of her. So there was no way for her to swerve and miss. It was just too fast. So I put my car into a park, threw on my emergency lights because I still have emergency lights, no reds in front, but yellow and whites on front, yellows on sides, and yellow and red in the back light. And called the 911, told them what we had, gave them size up of the damage, told her I had at least two patients, one in each car, and that just let rescue know that I'm starting triage and see who needs help. And they hung up, said, okay. Cop got there and saw me, and he says, are you still on the job? I said, nope. No, I had to give that up a long time ago, but I still help.
Yeah.
And so the lady who blew the stop sign, I went to her car first because the door was a little bit stuck, but I was able to get it open. And I said, okay, you just stay right by your car. Police are on the way. Rescue's on the way. I said, but I got to check the other woman in that car. that hit you. And her airbags went off, so she had the airbag burns. Her neck was hurting her. Thank goodness she was wearing her seatbelt. Her airbags went off. But I knew when she was complaining about the neck in front and in the back that I had to take care of her. So I had carried a couple of the disposable neck braces in my BLS bag because I've kept, ever since I got disabled out in '85, I've kept a full BLS uh, toolbox, big medical case, and I have gloves, ropes. Um, I'm supposed to be demonstrating them, but I have also Pry Guy's lever, the 5-foot lever, and I also have the little handy one, which is great for getting the rubber in a car window, in a car door. You can get all that rubber that's still up there, and we got to get that off. Well, we usually take a knife, which can injure ourselves, but if you have this little tool, it takes it with two fork tines, and you get it right down. So I went to her, and I was hearing the first siren come in. It turned out to be police, which is fine. I got in the back of the car. I told her, listen, I'm going to hold your neck and your head. I don't want you to move it. Don't turn your head to look at anything. Don't turn to the right. I'm just going to be behind you. You're going to feel it's kind of funny because I have gloves on. So just hold on, and we'll get the fire rescue will be here in just a moment. And then they showed up, and I gave them the bullet, and they put her on the gurney, and as they were wheeling her to the ambulance, she said to me, I don't know how to thank you for helping me. And I said, with a tear in my eye, because I wear my emotions on my sleeve, I said, thank you for coming into my life so I could help you. And that was it, and got in the car, police officer asked for my information, gave him the information, never heard back from them, but no problem. She got there, and I forgot how I heard back about 2 weeks later that she was back to work and she was doing okay. And there's nothing that makes you feel better about yourself. And you don't have to be a former firefighter, a current firefighter, a paramedic, or EMT. Sometimes it's just being another person holding somebody's hand. That can make all the difference in the world to them.
Yeah, being useful in the moment,
Exactly.
right? Like, and it's funny how you're like, well, triage patients, we have two, we have multiple cars, you probably said, yeah, we're going to need traffic cut off here going northbound, and right? Like you get back into you can't take that training out of you, and and it's an opportunity for you to still, like you said, make an impact on somebody, and I thought it was a very, very gracious response. Was you said, thanks for coming into my life. Like, I'm sure the person was like, wait a minute, what did he just thank me for getting into a car accident? But I understand the deep meaning behind it is,
Yeah.
you got an opportunity to be useful at the point when needed. And I think have you read Arnold Schwarzenegger wrote a book? It's basically on the basis of be useful. And I love that idea, especially when you kind of step back and look at in the context of the fire service, even volunteer side or career side is, are you ready to be useful? And we could relate this back to health, wellness, and mental health and fitness is, we don't get to use those skills every single day, right? There's some shifts where you feel like, I just was a babysitter today. And then there's some shifts where you're on a 6-hour fire and you're going, okay, I'm glad that I do this fitness, and I'm glad I ate well today because I was able to provide the service I swore I would do and make an impact and be useful. And I think that kind of correlates back with the whole thought process of, like I said, fitness, nutrition, sleep. Mentally, you got to be prepared and put in that position because, most of the stuff you did was cognitive. There was a little bit of fitness, but you had to be able to identify the need, triage, and figure out where you were most useful for that particular moment. And you were able to help out. Right, like that's what we do every single day because we can't mitigate almost every part of it. But how can we be the most safe, and how can we provide the greatest amount of good for that particular individual. And so it ties in great with like our whole wellness and functional fitness seminar or workshop. That's kind of been the the motivation behind trying to get these things out to the fire service. And the story I have is when I first started presenting about 15 years ago was I was just the fitness guy. I talked about all you need to do is start moving and get working out, right? Train functionally for the job. And there's some truth to that. But, for those listening, I apologize because there's so much more to this picture. And over the years, as the data kept coming in and as I've aged, I've realized that. And, now to still be here to be able to talk about, well, with FRCE and I mentioned Chief Lieb, we've come up with this 2-day, and I almost call it like an advocacy program. I don't know if Chief Lieb is on board with that yet, but I mean, it's his program. I'm just able to disseminate the information. But it's really about what are the basic elements of health and wellness that every firefighter needs to understand, and how can they apply what they've learned throughout a career. And that's really what we're trying to accomplish within these 2 days. But we don't just talk about functional fitness. We talk about sleep and its importance on your health, how it impacts your health negatively and positively, and then what you need to take away from that, to actually work on sleeping, which is a skill, by the way, right? Steve, when we're young, we feel like, hey, we're really good at it. We do it all the time. The older you get, the more you realize there are some things that we need to do to set us up for success in sleeping. So we cover sleep. And then, with fitness, I used to think, all right, all you got to do is work out. Well, if you're not well rested, you need to cater your workouts to where you are. And then the other part of that is nutrition. So if you're not eating and fueling yourself right, you're not going to have the energy to work out, and you're not going to have the motivation to even to do recovery stuff. So, sleep plays into it, nutrition plays into it, and then and I call it functional fitness. And why I say functional is because I've watched people work out and they're basically breaking themselves down. They're not really building themselves up in a manner in which they're ultimately going to reduce injuries. They're going to possibly promote injury because they're training improperly. Yeah. And why are they training improperly? Well, I think in most cases, it's not their fault. They just, we used to be athletes, a lot of us in the fire service, so we still think we are, but we train like we're football players. Well, I was a high school football player. You're 38 years old, your cholesterol is high, and you're 45 pounds overweight. You're not a football player. Like, it comes back into look in the mirror, figure out where you're really at, what you need. You just need, if that's you just need to establish habits that will get you more healthy. You don't need to worry about how much you bench, because that's going to lead to a shoulder injury. It's going to put on probably another 15 pounds because you're going to get injured. And so the beautiful part about these workshops is that we set the table with, these are the health issues in the fire service, and we all know what they are. They haven't really changed. They've actually been amplified over the years. Cancer is probably the biggest epidemic that we're going to be dealing with.
That's right. That's our biggest one right this year. We have a lot more firefighters succumbing to cancer, which was probably, can't say absolutely, but probably job related. Because, for example, for years, and some still do, we'd go to a dumpster fire. We just take the 1-inch line, put it out. We're not wearing SCBA. Yet you have no idea what was cooking in that dumpster during that fire.
Right.
And it's just
car fires.
Exactly.
Fires really are horrible.
They're just, you can easily be overwhelmed.
Yes.
I've been on a car fight without SCBA, and during it, the wind took a turn. My buddy and I, and met him in '77 at that fire department. He's still my best friend today. He's a chief pilot for one of the Florida counties, and we both got a snootful. And I mean, we were coughing and throwing up and everything like that. So the chief pulled us away, gave the hose to the captain, and said to us, I'm sorry, boys, this happened. He goes, let's get the O2 off the engine. But from now on, we're all going to be wearing SCBAs for any car or truck fire. I didn't realize it could be that bad. At that time, it happened to be a Volkswagen Beetle, but we at least got the internal fire out before the magnesium wheels caught on, which would have been a long, long day when that happened. Although we had plenty of foam because the chief was at that time he was a national expert on fighting flammable fires. So we had like 150 gallons of 3M AFFF in our storage room. So we always had to practice with. Luckily, the only time I ever got any on me was on my toe of my boot and never on my skin or anything like that. So I feel very blessed now, all these years later.
Right. No foam parties, huh?
Right.
No
And
foam dance
I did
parties,
get,
right?
a year ago, I had my PFAS test and they all came back clear as well. But because I was thinking, I asked my hematologist, I said, you think it's worthwhile for me to do this? And he said, yeah, I think do it. You can get, that might help us a little bit. I said, okay. So, I don't have any cancer. I got him into the firefighter cancer initiative. And
The
now
registry? The registry?
no, just for his office to let
Oh,
them
okay.
know. Because he gets firefighters as patients as a hematologist
Oh, I
oncologist.
gotcha. Yeah.
So he said, I never knew that. I said, so you need to ask any new patient, are they or have they been firefighters?
Yeah. Yeah, because they're susceptible. The data is staggering. That says, in some cases, 9 to up 20%, depending upon what type of cancer it is.
Yeah.
It's not just, and so this is kind of the essence of what we're trying to teach too. It's right. We can see the contaminants in the smoke, and we know we're breathing it in, and so that's a toxin we breathe in. Obviously, it gets into our lungs. Our body's got to work to fight that off, right? So that's one of the different ways that causes inflammation within our system. Your body gets inflamed. So what we also try to get into firefighters' heads is that when you don't sleep well and enough, that also cannot it can add to that inflammation. If you eat poorly, high sugar, high fat, salt diets, and not healthy fats, energy drinks, all those things can actually contribute to inflammation within the system. Just like breathing in that bad air and not wearing your SCBA, all of these small exposures and small things can add up to increased, cortisol response and inflammatory response. And so like when you look at the total picture, you're like, okay, now if I'm not wearing my mask, I'm not eating very well, and I'm not sleeping, and which probably means I really don't have enough energy to work out consistently. All of these things, it all points to cancer, cardiorespiratory, mental health problems, right? And stroke, heart attack, obesity, diabetes. For men, low testosterone. I think that's another thing that we're not talking about. You know what, guys? It's affecting your balls. And women have been very vocal about reproductive health, and the research is not, it's showing that, yeah, women are having issues with reproduction. So are the men. It's affecting our sperm. It's affecting our balls. And I say it that way because I want guys to listen, because we don't, right? And so the essence of these conferences and these workshops that we're doing is to say, look, when we talk about total wealth, total wellness, and total functional fitness, what we're talking about is all of these different micro kind of traumas that cause inflammation. Even seeing and being on a traumatic scene can cause that inflammatory response within your system. And some people talk about parasympathetic and sympathetic reactions, same thing. Like, we need to control ourselves to bring us back down to zero and find mechanisms, and I call them protocols, and create your health protocols. We have SOGs and protocols for almost everything we do in the fire service. But my question to everybody listening is, what's your own health protocol? Have you developed one? And if not, why not? Why do you not put together something that says every day I'm going to try to drink 75 ounces of water. I'm going to try to get, 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Now, if you're on shift, I understand that one's hard, but there are some things that we can do. Powering down 30 minutes before we go to bed really helps get a more efficient sleep. You, you know, Caffeine, limiting caffeine 5, 6 hours before we go to bed, trying to get into a routine. So there are some things that we can do, napping properly and for the right amount of time. For nutrition, it comes back to real basics. Obviously, we've talked about hydration, but are you eating real food? The more chemicals you eat when you're reading, and I mentioned, these energy drinks, you read those labels, man, it's just a chemical cocktail with caffeine. And that actually is again adding to disease. And the actions that we should be using to actually help improve and reduce our chance of diseases in a lot of cases are actually doing the opposite and acting as a catalyst for this disease when we don't look at it as a total wellness picture and we don't put habits into play. And so for these 2 days, we have some experts in sleep. We have Dina Ali. For that, we've hooked up with Megan Lautz to do nutrition. We've also partnered with National Academy of Sports Medicine, who is an organization that's been accredited for 30 plus years, and they do very functional, mobility-based, strength-based certifications that really transfer to performance improvement. So we teamed up with NASM, and they're doing more of the functional fitness side. They also do some nutrition and sleep. And then, I've been fortunate enough to kind of put it all together and say, this is how you apply it. And one of the things I do, and I've started to challenge, and I'll bring it up in your program here, Steve, because if someone does this, I would more than happy send them a coin. I came up with something called the Resilient 50. Full disclosure, why 50? Because I was turning 50 years old, and I wanted to really see what shape I could get in by really, really focusing on, at that point I chose 7 habits, but it's really kind of morphed into a 5 for 50. And if you choose 5 healthy habits and you follow them for 50 days, all I want you to do is send me, and you can email me at zamzowfitness@gmail.com, or you can go to the Fire Rescue Fitness website, or you can find me at one of the FRCE conferences, and I just want to write up that said, hey, Zam, I followed these 5 things, and 50 days later, I have more energy. I'm a better spouse. I'm a better parent. I lost like 5 pounds. My attitude is just better, and I just feel like I'm functioning. I'm flourishing more throughout the day, and so simple habits. And you could choose. I give a baseline of 10 of them, but it might be taking your dog for a walk every single day. It might be drinking 70 ounces of water every single day. It might be, and I believe every first responder needs to dedicate 30 minutes of time to working out. Now, working out can be a massage. Working out can be stretching. Working out can be taking a light walk, a recovery walk, but 30 minutes a day. So yeah, some of those workouts need to be higher intensity, but we also need to understand when we need to step back and recover. And so like you choose 5 different things. It might be eating 3 or 4 servings of fruits and vegetables every single day. It might be following a diet plan, whatever you are, or wherever you are in your fitness journey. If you're starting from scratch, then I would say 8,500 steps, 75 ounces of water a day. Take 10 minutes a day to read or research fitness, because we want this to become a habit. Gratitude, be grateful. There are so many different things that you could do for those 5 different habits that will put you in a better place 50 days from now. And so when we do these seminars, the challenge is, all right, you've just attended a day and a half of all of this great information. It means nothing if it dies in this room. And how do you apply it? Well, 5 for 50 is one way. We also talk about creating workouts with your crew. and we use some of the functional fitness lessons that NASM instructors, we have some of their master trainers along with myself. Dan Kerrigan from Firefighter Functional Fitness is along with us on this project. So there are so many great individuals behind it, with the idea that people walk out of this seminar with a workbook full of knowledge and a plan to apply it. And then the last part of that challenge is to pay it forward to someone else. And so, going back to your crew and saying, hey, this crazy dude, Zam, I don't know if you know him, but he's nuts. He challenged me. I couldn't do 50 days of following 5 habits. Let's do this as a crew. Everybody throw $20 in. Whoever, if you get it, you get your $20 back. If you don't, it goes into a kitty or whatever that might be. Because firefighters love a challenge.
Yeah.
And right. So why don't we start challenge each other to be a little bit better every day instead of, how many minutes you can stay in a cold plunge, or how many, pierogies you can eat before you puke, or, those are fun challenges too. Don't get me wrong, but like, use this stuff, this knowledge to help make the people around you healthier. And that's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to use the peer-to-peer advocacy model with some simple techniques to really propel a healthier fire service. And so far, like I said, I'll be in FDNY. We're going to do this Orange County fire. It doesn't matter who you are. I mean, there's trainers, of course, that eat this up. But what I really want is that change agent, that captain or that chief or that firefighter that knows and understands the value of health. But what we're going to try to do is give them tidbits that they can start teaching other people. Like, hey, did you realize that you need between 7 and 8 hours of sleep to like clear, we call it like the glymphatic system in your brain, which means that's where we kind of filter out the trauma we see. So if you're not getting 7 to 8 hours after traumatic experiences, that's why we're maybe falling into this PTSD and having mental health trouble. And hey, here's 3 techniques that I learned I'm trying to do, with sleep. Here are 3 techniques that I'm doing with nutrition. We need to have a salad with every meal now at the firehouse. We need to make sure that we hydrate. So as you could tell, I'm super excited to be able to team with an organization like FRCE, because I believe, down the road, that's an organization like this can propel this message. It's got one mission, and that's to help improve the fire service. And I talked to Chief Lee, and I said, Chief, are we really trying to take NFFF and make them out of business? Because NFFFs, obviously, they're trying to reduce injuries too, but we also then honor those that we've lost in the line of duty. And I'd really love to say that, it's, if someone's just taking that out of context, they'll probably get mad about. But right, like, our idea is to keep people off that wall and to provide, seminars like this. I believe are the root of doing that, because it's not just about learning the information; it's about applying it to yourself and then passing it on. And so throughout that conference, I asked 3 questions. I said, well, what did you learn? What are you going to do about it? How are you going to pass it on? And I think if people can understand that concept, we talk about it with training. We talk about it with ventilation. We talk about it with hose line advancement. We talk about it with forcible entry. Once you learn it, we want you to teach it. Once they learn it, we want them to teach it. Same concept with health and wellness. And so, like I said, we're doing a bunch of these. If people, if they're interested, they can email me. Hopefully we'll be doing, we're doing 2-day workshops right now, but I kind of envision this, and Chief Lieb has already kind of put it in my head. He's like, how do you make this a 1 day? So we could come to a fire department, give it to, a fire department or a region, and, then maybe follow up with a second one, like a level 2, which I've already kind of figured out in my head what we would do next. But, so it's concepts like that I think are really the way that we're going to make an impact in challenging each other just to do some of these things that we know are simple, right? Like, you could, if they're listening to this and they did a shot every time I said the word fitness, shot of water, they'd almost have their 80 ounces in. So, that's kind of what we do. We challenge people that attend that to use this knowledge and apply it and pass it on. So
and that is so important. And I also want to raise the point that we need to know that no one's trying to reduce firefighting. No one's trying to force you into anything. But if you care about yourself and those around you that you care about, you owe it both to yourself and to them to be able to do this job. As we mentioned a little while ago, cancer is the #1 leading disease that takes the lives of our firefighters. We also have a problem, and I'm glad you talked about mental health to a certain extent, because we just previously, we interviewed, if you've watched the show or listened to the podcast, so these aren't out yet, but we had Jeff Dill on last Friday, and Jeff keeps track of every suicide in the fire service. He's the only one that actually keeps the data. None of the big organizations do. And so far, it's leaning towards there'll be over 100 firefighters through the end of the year that will take their own life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an epidemic, is the way I look at it.
Yep, just like cancer is. Yeah, just like cancer is. Yeah.
It's preventable, but you have to be, you are the man or the woman in the firehouse, then you owe it to yourself, your family, and those you work with to seek out mental health help. Okay? No one is going to castigate you for being a firefighter and having these urges. When we think about what we see, some of us on a daily basis, it can't help but eat at you, but it eats at you slowly. You have a choice to stop it when it's in that slow motion, way easier than if you've kept it going for months and months at a time and you don't know what to do about it. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. See, every firefighter has to know that there is somebody they can talk to. Could be a chief officer. It could be your clergy person at the synagogue or church you go to. It could be a doctor that you know who could refer you. Maybe your own personal physician can talk with him or her about those dark thoughts and get help. It is not a detour on a one-way street.
No, there's always a direction. Yeah.
Right.
Our EAP in our city is very good. And I know that's not the case in everyone, but
what's the EAP stand for, please?
The employee assistance programs. Yep. So most cities have some type of EAP. Some people don't like to go to it because they want to go outside of it, and I understand that. There's some great resources. I know FRC's website, firstresponder.org, has some great resources. So you have to do something. You can't just let it stew. And I think that's the other part of it, is that what we realize is that it doesn't just stew. It actually affects us mentally, it affects us physically. And so again, firstrespondercenter.org has some great resources for it. I know there's some other organizations that on Fire Rescue One, there's a resource page. And personally, like I look at, I'm big on application of all this information. And so my Forrest Gump kind of approach, I said I have room temperature IQ, but I think maybe one of the positives that comes from that is that, okay, I can look at all this stuff and go, all right, it doesn't matter if this stuff doesn't matter. The research doesn't matter if I don't apply the basics and the foundation of it. It's kind of like I get a lot of questions about, well, what do I need to take for supplements? And I'll go, well, you're not drinking enough water. You're not eating your fruits and vegetables. You're taking this crap, like stick to the foundation first. Try to get 3 good meals of lean proteins and real foods before you start thinking about throwing protein shakes all over the place. like stick with the fundamentals. And so like I always come up with these lists, and one I follow every year. I call it the Healthy 10. And it's workout 30 minutes a day. And that includes like taking a walk or, some they call it grounding, I think now is like the outdoor term. Or I'll stretch, that includes high intensity, low intensity, but every single day, 30 minutes of exercise. Wash my gear twice a year, wear my SCBA, overhaul and all fires within, we call it the hot zone of the fire. Um, get my cancer screens, annual medical, try to practice gratitude every single day. I struggle with that some days, but I'm gotten better with it. So it's things like that. I do see a counselor once a year, if not sometimes twice. It's just to check in. It's free. It's offered through my EAP. It's great to come in and they say, yeah, you got a pretty good perspective, or they'll say, here, this is something that might help you, get a better perspective. So I do that, and I think everybody needs to do that. And so there's that list of 10 things that I try to follow every single year, and I'll take usually time in December and say, all right, how'd I do? Pretty good. And as far as like 5 for 50, I try to do 5 habits, and I'll follow them for 50 days, and then I'll usually give myself a week off, and I'll maybe add one, or I'll say I need to focus on this one a little bit better. And just constantly go back to looking in the mirror and looking at reality and finding that plan and then just executing it. And to me, it's that's really what's helped, from a standpoint of, I'm over 50 and I still feel good and still valid and useful. And, we had a 6-hour fire, and I was able to go with my kids. I call them my kids, but like some of my guys in my crew are half my age. And so the next day I was like, "Are you guys sore?" They're like, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, I am too, but I'm twice your age." Um, and so I just think, and I implore people that are listening to start thinking about creating their own protocol. Create your own, formula for health, for optimization, and it transfers into so many aspects of life, from being a better parent to being a better spouse, to being a better leader, to being a better firefighter. It's just you have to apply it. And so that's what I implore you to do. And if you do it for 50 days, reach out. I'll send you a coin, and you'll make my day. And that's the other part about, right? Like they'll make my day and give me motivation to keep doing it.
That's it. I mean, that's great advice on all the levels. I know that when we first started, and I told you where I was out, I was, overweight, and I started doing the walks. I was walking the dog every morning back then. Um, and I eventually, it wasn't easy because I was already, you know, probably I was already in my 60s at that point. Um, and yet it's kind of wishy-washy as I was initially about trying it, because I'm not a firefighter anymore. I'm not in, my health was okay except for my knees, and my back. Of course, that was a back injury that occurred in the fire service, as did my first knee accident. It was at the same time, uh, in that house with a hole in the floor in the kitchen. It was a burn house for us to practice on. And when my backup firefighter heard his bells go off, he started screaming, "I'm out of air. I'm going to die. I'm going to die." And he jumped out, let go of the hose, went out the front door. Now I'm opening the bail, and the captain's on one side, and I'm backing up to give us a little more room for the water. And all of a sudden, my left leg goes all the way through the hole up to the groin. My right leg bent backwards. And finally, I got the fire out because I knew I couldn't let go of the hose because it would kill the officer who was in the room with me, because we were running 150 psi on an inch and a half. In those days, we didn't have the 1 3/4 yet. And it turned out that I blew out my knee, and we didn't know at the immediate point but my doctors have gone back with the information I've provided them and said that's probably what happened, because the steel cage that held the SCBA hit the back of the hole, so it couldn't go down, and it jammed into my back. So while I was complaining about the pain in my knee, I didn't realize anything had happened to my back until it manifests itself several years later. But the fact is that oftentimes you can avoid this. And, in this case, in my case, this was a part-time firefighter. He worked in a community that had what they call public safety, and they still may be some around, although they have lessened. But that's where you have to be a police officer and a firefighter at the same time. And you get, whatever you get dispatched on, that's where you have to respond. And that's tough, because you're training one thing for a police officer, you're training a different way for being a firefighter. You don't necessarily merge very well together. But this kid thought that the bells, even though this was the last day of class, we had 2-day classroom, 2-day burn, and this was the last burn of the whole program, and he just bailed. Even though I told him, don't let go of the hose, he bailed. And that led me to, these injuries. Never apologized the next day at graduation. He saw me and turned away. Here I was in crutches, and he turned away. He didn't have the let's say it nicely, didn't have the heart to come over and apologize what had happened. He just took it as, okay, I took the class, I'm getting my certificate. I don't know if he got the certificate, actually, because my name was called first, and my two buddies and I, we bailed after that. But the fact is that you have ways. First of all, the first thing you have to stop doing is thinking yourself, you're the mighty hero. You are part of a machine that helps people. The human machine that answers the calls when people need us. And that's what you have to remember first. So anything you do out of the cone, let's say, is going to be detrimental and not be helpful to you. And Zam has this morning shared a lot of that information with you, but doesn't have to stop here. Doesn't have to stop the practice. Maybe you can't bring it to your whole firehouse yet. Maybe you just want to try it. And you can contact Zam. We'll give you his email right just before we finish here. You can reach out to him. You will always get an email back. Just be honest and tell him what your problems are, what your concerns are, and you will get an educational mail back. Not just same copy for the last week, next copy again. No, he'll answer you individually and address your issues. And that's something we don't see too often in today's modern world, especially with the spread of the audio versions of podcasts, with the video versions that I do and that Zam does. Watch them, listen to them, and don't just do it when you're busy doing something else and let it play in the background. That's not going to cut it. You need to listen to these or watch these videos to really learn. If you're man or woman enough to realize you still need to learn. You got 20 years in and you want to go to another 5, that's great. But you still have to follow the same protocols, safety protocols that you did, or that some of us did way back when. But since Zam came out up with this program, we were talking off camera that we believe started in late 2016 or early 2017, his first appearance here. How far we've come in good things for the fire service, good ideas, good practices, as he just talked about. And it's not just for when you're bunking at the barn. You can use the same sleep tactics when you're at home. You need that good sleep when you're home. You got 2 days off. You got the kids, the errands, stuff like that. Take the time on the night that you're not going onto the job the next morning. Do it for yourself. Because if you do it for yourself, you're doing it for your family. And you're doing it for your department.
And you're setting the example.
Yeah, that's the most important thing.
Yep.
Well, Sam, I can't thank you enough. Please, let's give our audiences the way that they can see you, hear you, etc. Or email you too.
Yeah, yeah. Better Every Shift podcast is on Fire Rescue One. There's also a YouTube channel for Better Every Shift podcast. We do weekly, and that's been a great outlet for me. Been able to really interview a lot of influential leaders. One of the things I got to interview Joe DeSena, who founded Spartan, and there's an episode there where he actually tells people like if they need some motivation, he'll pay for their entry into any Spartan race this year. And we've had over 500 first responders take advantage of that. Actually, maybe
Wow.
more than that. You can email me zamzowfitness@gmail.com. As Steve said, I that's where I really try to, it may take me a little bit of time to get back to everybody, but eventually I try to respond because I'm active on social media with Fire Rescue Fitness. It's Facebook at Fire Rescue Fitness, and then at Get FRF on Instagram. But I post. I really like to have conversations and make connections via email, and that's kind of why someone asked where the nickname. So now a lot of times it's Zam, Z-A-M, or just a Zam, and it came from the fact that I was answering a lot of emails and I got sick of typing out my name because I'm a horrible typer, so I'd always mess up Aaron. And so I just started just putting Zam, let me know if this makes sense. Here's a great link. Give me an update on how it's going. And then I would just go Zam and send. And so it just was an efficiency thing. And now it's kind of turned into a little bit of a nickname. And but with the idea behind if I can make an impact, if I can make a connection via email, I'd love to do it. I do have like free workout programs that goes. I mentioned R50. If you go to r50challenge.com, I just set this challenge up. You get, you can enter it. You can choose your 6. There it's 7. I'm actually going to change it back down to 5 for 50. And it goes through, you get a workout program that goes with it, some eating guidelines, and it takes you through kind of how you can implement that. That's another great resource. And so, and if you see me at a conference or you see I'm presenting somewhere, just say hi. Let me know, whether I'm on to something or on something. If I made sense, it's always nice to hear. Because sometimes you wonder, right, Steve? Like you may see numbers or you may not, but when you really see someone say, "Hey, I listened to you and I thought that was a great point," those kind of things make my day. So I really appreciate any conversations that come from that. But again, thanks, buddy, for having me on. Look forward to maybe next season as well, coming on to talk about how these things are blowing up and they're successful. That's my hope. And always appreciate the opportunity, my friend.
Well, it's always great to have you with us because you provide in our short format so much information to our brothers and sisters to how to stay well, how to get better. We were even, some of it even helps us how to cope. And that's not even counting the actual programs that Aaron can share, that Zam will share with you if you want his help. And, are you still running that contest that you used to do? And whoever lost most weight and got most shape?
Oh, yeah, we were doing, I had done a Better Every Shift challenge and really focusing now more on I call it the Resilient 50 or the R50. And it's the same kind of concept. But instead of getting people to focus on just losing weight, we focus on establishing habits because those habits are what's going to transfer for a healthier career. And, the 50 days will lead to 100 to 150. And so I started this last year and I've had some really cool stories about people that have done the first 50 and they're on a second 50 and now they're getting their crew members involved. And, they just maybe added 1 or 2 habits, but, in 100 or 150 days, a couple of times I'll email them back and go, well, what have you seen physically? And they'll email, oh yeah, well, I've lost 15 pounds and now I'm running, 5K and I'm going to go do that Spartan race because you challenged us to do that. And to me, that's really where I like to focus because over the years, the people that have really made a drastic change and impact are the ones that focused on the day-to-day operations, the day-to-day protocol, and following it for 20 days, 25 days, 50 days, all of a sudden you look up and go, man, I've just worked out 50 days in a row. No wonder my pants aren't fit me very well, or no wonder I actually feel a little bit better. And it's really cool because a lot of people email me. They're like, I don't want the coin, man. You've helped me enough. But those are the emails that I love getting, and that's where I really feel the impact is. It's great to set a goal to lose weight, but if you're not consistently doing the things that will get you there, focus on that first. James Clear, of course, with the tiny habits, and that concept is really what I think we need to push people to do first.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
I want to also bring up one thing. I want to talk to our volunteers of part pays who are watching or listening. It is just as important for a volunteer firefighter, either gender, I don't care, to keep themselves in decent shape. The number one cause of death to volunteers is cardiac issues. And that's because, for the most part, we, as volunteers, we don't think we need to be like real firefighters. Oops, wrong definition. You are a real firefighter. You may be volunteer, you've done your training, etc. You are a volunteer, and you have to care for your health and those around you in your volunteer department or part pay department. You have to be there to tell them the same story that we're telling you now, that you heard now. You have to take care of yourself, just like your career brothers and sisters.
Yep.
What can happen to them can more easily happen to you.
Yeah.
Because most volunteers are not in great shape. I started that way, and within less than a year, I had dropped 20 pounds. I was doing a lot more work in our apartment, and I was able to spend a lot of time in the firehouse learning. Because once I got in and my basic learning was done, I thought it was over. But anytime I could read something, learn something else, I did. And in those days, we weren't looking at cancer. Yeah, we knew about heart attacks, but it wasn't a big deal being made. Today, you know the truth. Whether you want to admit it or not, you know how dangerous firefighting is. Not just the actual firefight itself, but you taking care of yourself.
Yeah. And I think with volunteers, I was a volunteer when I started, and I've presented, and I had a couple volunteers be like, hey, right, we don't need to be as fit as the careers because we don't see as many fires. And then I said, I beg to differ. I think you have to be more fit because you don't get to use those skills as often. But I said, is a structure fire in a volunteer, area any different than a structure fire where I am in Madison? No. I mean, the construction and sometimes is the same. And in a lot of cases, you don't have the manpower and you're already behind the eight ball because the response might be a little bit behind. And so I almost beg to differ that you really, really need to be fit as a volunteer. And it's the most difficult part because you're doing a regular job, your family, and then volunteering on top of it. And so with that, I think that's where the protocol really helps for volunteers is, maybe you start with two things you're going to start doing for a couple of days, for 50 days, and then you just keep adding to it, but it becomes part of your everyday life. And then we can get you to avoid being a statistic and staying off that wall. And right. So it's really, really pertinent to that volunteer, or on-call paid member as well. So very great point.
Great. Well, again, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. Always provide excellent information to keep our firefighters healthy and well, but they have their own responsibility. It's not just listening to Aaron or watching his podcast, listening to it. You have to play an active part in taking care of yourself. You can't foster it off onto other people. It's your responsibility. You took the job. You decide to volunteer. Now you have to follow the lines to do it right. Not just know how to lay hose, know how to hook up to the hydrant, know how to do a reverse lay, etc. You have to know how to take care of yourself, not just wearing your bunker gear. You have to take care of yourself every single day. Doesn't mean you're in a prison cell. It just means you have to take care of yourself to do the job you want to do, whether your career or part pay or volunteer. Makes no difference. You took an oath. I always try to end with this information. You take an oath to protect lives and property. If you have a tough time climbing onto that back step to pull a ladder down, or if you get a large diameter hose down, you're huffing and puffing after you got the hose and you pulled down, that's not a good sign. That's something that should really take 2 breaths out of you. But if you can't do it, remember, look at that person in the mirror, because they'll always know what you're doing, right and wrong. So, folks, thanks for tuning in. If you're watching the video, you know that this will be the conclusion of the video version of the podcast. Those of you listening to the audio, you know, again, what will happen. We'll have a couple of PSAs, and then we'll finish up with a couple of more issues on the podcast. To everybody for tuning in, thanks so very much. Stay safe and stay well, and let's remember to take care of each other as well. Take care, folks.